It was a crisp, bright London morning. The sun glinted off the gold gates of Buckingham Palace, filtering through wispy clouds to catch the gleaming buttons on the royal guards' uniforms. The palace grounds were, as always, teeming with tourists. The clicking of cameras, hushed conversations, and the calls of tour guides hung in the air. There I stood, William Hunt, in my usual spot, ramrod straight. My tall, sturdy frame was a picture of discipline. The bearskin hat, my stern expression, and impeccable uniform gave me an imposing presence. My motionless stance drew attention, inspired admiration, and sometimes provoked mischief. That day, a man emerged from the crowd, clearly craving attention. His bright red jacket and demeanor seemed to scream that he was the center of the universe. Around 35 years old, he strode confidently up to me and shouted, "Hey, soldier boy, crack a smile." The crowd chuckled. I remained stoic as always, offering no reaction. When he didn't get a response, the man's face soured and he raised his voice. "What are you, made of wood or some kind of robot?" As laughter rippled, the man edged closer to the boundary line. "Hey everyone, look at that hat. Is it real fur or some cheap imitation?" He then pulled out his phone, took several selfies with a mocking grin, aiming it at my face. Winking, he said, "Anyone else want a picture with the statue?" The crowd began to murmur. Some continued to laugh. Others pulled out their phones to record, and some turned away with disapproving glances. The man, introducing himself as Brian, was obviously enjoying the attention. He waved, drawing more people closer. "Okay, let's try something else. Maybe touching this hat will get a reaction," he announced. With a dramatic flourish, he reached for my hat. Just then, a voice from security boomed, "Sir, please don't cross the line. It's against the rules." Brian pulled back his hand, saying with a sarcastic smirk, "Relax, I'm just having fun. No harm done. I'm just a tourist." The crowd was getting louder now. Some kept recording, while others shook their heads. As for me, my tension was building. Brian's antics were just the beginning. Suddenly, a sharp whistle cut through the air, and a large German shepherd appeared from the crowd. Its black fur gleamed in the sunlight. Powerful paws padded surely across the stone pavement. The dog stood by his owner, fixing his eyes on me. Brian commanded loudly, "Jack, sit," patting his thigh. The dog obeyed, but his gaze never left me. I felt a slight tightening in my chest. I remained calm as always, my eyes focused straight ahead, but my body was subtly preparing for action. Brian looked from the dog to me with a taunting expression. "Let's see if the statue finally reacts." "Jack!" Attack. The dog lunged forward, snarling and baring its teeth. The crowd gasped, cries of shock and fear echoing. People scattered, dropping their phones. Yet some continued to record this chaos. I didn't move an inch. Just as the dog came within a few feet, I blew a sharp, piercing whistle. The sound cut through the air like a knife, and the dog froze mid-lunge. He stopped so abruptly that his front paws skidded on the stone. He remained still for a moment, then tilted his head, looking confused. He slowly sat, as if heeding an invisible command. There was a beat of silence. It was as if someone had silenced the world. Motionless, I turned my head slightly toward Brian. My voice was low and measured, but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Your dog deserves more respect than that." The crowd's reaction was immediate. Applause broke out, followed by laughter, and someone yelled, "Great. Well said." Brian stood dumbfounded, his mocking smile gone, replaced by a face flushed with embarrassment. He looked at the calm dog, then back to me. "Do you think you're better than us?" he shouted, stepping forward, his voice echoing. He crossed the line, ignoring the boundaries. "This is just a costume, a stupid tradition. I paid for this show, and I'll get my money's worth." His face was contorted with anger. He was closing in on me, making erratic, grabbing motions. The crowd grew anxious. "That's too much! Someone stop him!" cries erupted. But Brian had lost all sense of boundaries. "You're just a hat-wearing clown. Do you think you're a symbol? I can get 10 of you for a $5," he ranted. I still didn't move. My silence was heavier than anything Brian could say. The crowd watched, holding their breath, as the tension reached its peak. Everyone knew that something was about to happen. Brian continued to rant, gesturing wildly and citing tourist rights. His reddened face was inches from my still and cold expression. From the other end of the plaza, a palace security officer, in his sharp uniform and special royal guard emblem, was weaving through the crowd. With calm, confident steps he strode toward Brian, just as the tourist was escalating, shouting, "I paid for this show. Where's my entertainment? This clown won't even try to impress me." The officer gently but firmly touched Brian's shoulder, turning him around. "Sir," he said in a calm but commanding voice, "your behavior is disturbing the public order. I must ask you to stop." Brian shrugged off the officer's hand in a theatrical way and snarled loudly. "Stop what? I'm just enjoying my trip. These guards are here for us tourists. Or do you think I came here for nothing?" The plaza grew silent. The square that was full of laughter and chatter a few moments ago was now filled with tension. All eyes were on the officer and Brian. Even the dog seemed to understand the situation, settling down on his paws and watching closely. The officer paused for a moment and then spoke in a loud, clear voice. "Sir, if you continue with this behavior, I will have to take you into custody for disturbing public order and threatening a secure area." The officer's words were like a thunderclap. The crowd began to whisper. Some took out their phones to record the moment. "What do you think you are doing?" Brian screamed, completely losing it. "It's just a joke. Your traditions mean nothing. I have the right to do as I please." Without saying anything, the officer took out his radio and spoke briefly. He kept his eyes on Brian. A few minutes later, 2 more guards arrived and began to approach the scene. The crowd started to talk. "Good. Get him out of here," one yelled. "Traditions are important. We don't need people like him," added another. I, as always, continued to stand motionless. I watched the scene out of the corner of my eye. My rigid posture seemed even more imposing amidst the growing drama. "He's just standing there," someone yelled, taking the guard's side. "That's exactly how he should be. He's keeping calm, unlike that idiot," a voice added. The crowd's thoughts were slowly changing. Those who had laughed at Brian's jokes at first were now uniting behind me. "Leave him alone," a woman shouted, holding her child in her arms. "He's doing his job." Brian looked at the now less than friendly crowd. His face grew pale, and he opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. "Sir," said the officer again, "you're under arrest." The guards led Brian away, and the dog followed obediently behind them. The dog looked at me one last time before leaving. I stood tall, imposing, and unwavering. The crowd erupted in applause. People waved at us, and some yelled encouraging things. I didn't react as always, but I could feel the sense of justice. As Brian was being taken out of the palace grounds, he continued to shout things like, "This isn't fair. I didn't do anything." His protests were drowned out by the crowd's jeers and condemnations. "Respect other cultures. This isn't a circus," some shouted. Those who had recorded the incident on their phones would probably upload it later to the internet with funny captions. When Brian finally disappeared from sight, everyone's eyes turned back to me as if nothing had happened. Only one movement betrayed that I was aware of the situation. I slightly adjusted my hat, bringing it to its perfect alignment. This small movement triggered another wave of applause from the crowd. People shouted, "That's composure, a true professional. Respect." Videos of the incident, the whistle that stopped the dog, and Brian's humiliation quickly spread on social media. The comments flooded in. "That guard showed what true dignity is. Tourist arrogance has no place here." The next day, A popular page shared a picture of me with the caption, "Symbol of dignity. Tradition triumphs over insolence." Brian had become a laughingstock. Videos of his temper tantrums and flushed face turned into memes, and his name became synonymous with tourist entitlement. As for me, I continued to stand tall, unwavering in my duty, never breaking a rule. My perfect posture and flawless demeanor reminded everyone that tradition and respect will always prevail. Remember, to hear more of these stories, please subscribe and share, because respect always wins.